We are back. The FDA is officially moving away from animal testing, marking a pivotal shift in how drugs are developed and evaluated in the United States. The agency recently announced plans to phase out traditional animal studies in favor of cutting-edge, human-based technologies. Joining me now is the Director of Research Policy for the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, Elizabeth Baker. And Elizabeth, a lot of people are saying this is groundbreaking, this is major. From your perspective, talk to us a little bit about the historicity here and why this is so special.
Yes, this is certainly an April to remember. It's a historic month for those of us who have been working to replace the use of animals in research and testing. The Food and Drug Administration on April 10th announced its plan to replace animal testing for pharmaceuticals, recognizing scientific and ethical issues with animal testing and the many benefits from utilizing human-based non-animal methods. And then on April 29th, the National Institutes of Health, the largest funder of medical research in the world, also announced a plan to move away from animal use. Both of these are such a big deal because they address the systemic issues that have really kept animal research and testing at the center and at the forefront, despite the many scientific and ethical issues that arise with using animals.
When we talk about this here, as we said, it's considered historic in some, but then when I think about what's going on here, there's a lot of people who are celebrating this move. And human-based technologies such as AI, organ chips, and advanced and vitro models, they actually work. How are they more predictive of actually human outcomes?
Yeah, it's really great that both the science and the ethics align here. For when it comes to using animals to develop drugs for humans, you just have so many translational failures. And that's because there are differences in our biology, our physiology, our lifespan, our metabolism, our disease characteristics. And so it really leads to different outcomes among species. But with these other methods, they are the human-based approaches. You really don't have those issues. And that's because they're utilizing the human cells, tissues, and data, and they are biologically relevant for humans. So you avoid those translational issues that come with having to extrapolate across species. And so you mentioned the in vitro tests and some of the AI and computational. These are really incredible tests that have biological human relevance. And so when we talk about the lab-based tests in vitro, one example is an organ chip. And organ chips are really exciting technology because essentially you can think of them as a small platform where human cells are seeded into this platform that is engineered to mimic the actual structure and the function of human organs. So it does a much better job of predicting what's going to happen when, say, a medication is given to humans. Because we want to know, is it going to be safe for humans? And is it even going to work for humans? The other thing is that you mentioned are the computer-based methods in AI. And so these are really incredible because they can take vast amounts of information, actual human data, and they can synthesize that information and make predictions about whether a drug will be safe or will be toxic for people. And they can also analyze drug structures and many more things. So it's very exciting. It's the modern technology that has really advanced so much in recent years. But until this month, until April of 2025, it just hasn't had the support within the agencies to utilize these. And so what is happening now is the policies and the practices that have really favored the use of old science are going to be changed in favor of these methods that can do a much better job of helping us understand key information about human health and disease, as well as key information about what will happen in humans when they take a medical product.
Let's talk dollars and cents for a moment. What is the financial implications for a person that's deciding and people who decide to move away from animal testing into this other realm?
I'm really glad you brought that up because cost is a big issue when it comes to drug development. It's a lengthy process. It takes 10 to 15 years to develop a new drug. The costs are staggering. It's about 2.6 billion to develop a new drug. You have the companies are facing the costs of the animal testing itself, but also the cost of the failures. So 9 out of 10 times animal tests are wrong at predicting what will happen in humans. And so you have these medications that are tested extensively in animals that then fail when they move into humans. And I'll say that again, over 90% of the time, the animal tests are wrong. And so companies pay for those failures. It's about 66% of the costs of their research and development costs are those failures. And so I think companies are really excited about this because they want to utilize more predictive technologies that can help them make better decisions about what will work. From a company standpoint, if they invest so much money into developing a drug to just have it fail in humans, they've really lost out financially, but they also lose out because the animal tests, as we know, can really mislead companies into moving investigational medicines into humans. And so if they can make better decisions, they ensure that they don't lose out on medications that could really work for people that were unfortunately screened out because the animal tests were wrong. They'll be in a much better financial situation. And of course, with the cost of drugs in the United States, the expectation is that as the research and development is more streamlined, the costs to companies are decreased, that hopefully the end users and patients will see that as well.
Elizabeth, about 90% of Americans were against animal testing from the jump. Given the fact that that number exists at such a high rate, how important was the public's voice in really rendering what we see today?
I think it's really important. So there has been a lot of support for this for a long time. The public, as you said, about 86% of people want to see a phase out of animal testing altogether. But it's not just the public, it's also Congress. And this has been a bipartisan issue for a long time where you see congressional support for pushing the agency away from relying on these animal tests so strongly. And then you have advisory committees too. So there's just been a lot happening from the public, from Congress, from other stakeholders for a long time. But what is different now is that we have a leader at the Food and Drug Administration who says this is a priority. It was actually his first action in office. And so now it's different because it's top down. Before, a lot of these things were more grassroots. They were coming from the outside, and the agency was the missing piece. But so now things have changed, and you really have everybody coming together saying, this is the way to do this, and the time is now.
Congress has really pushed the FDA in getting this to embrace this non-animal traditions. For yourself, obviously you're familiar with the FDA Modernization Act pretty well, and so for somebody who's not, how do you break that down? Because you talked about Congress earlier, but they really they've got this act in front of them.
Yeah, Congress has been great on this issue going back many years. So we started working with Congress on possibly 8 to 10 years ago, really talking with offices, getting them to understand these issues. And I will say Congress really embraced it from the jump. They started with outreach to the FDA commissioners, trying to get answers and really build up their own knowledge here. They have allocated funding, millions of dollars, to the FDA to do this work in the past to reduce animal testing. And then with the FDA Modernization Act, that was a law where essentially Congress said, we are being very clear in the statute that non-animal methods can be used and that we are not requiring the FDA to require animal experiments. And so now it's really up to the FDA to change its own policies. There are regulations and there are some guidance that definitely require and recommend and favor the use of animals. And so these have been a big deal and something that need to be changed. And the agency is aware of that. And importantly, they are saying as part of this big announcement that they will change those policies to ensure that these more predictive technologies that can do a better job for humans indeed are embraced. And if you're a company working in regulatory affairs and you need to understand what is it that the agency is going to accept, it's going to be clear in their policies that they will accept the non-animal methods.
For 10 years, you've been doing this work, more than a decade, just about. To get to this point today, your feelings?
I am feeling it's surreal. It really is. This, as I said, April 2025, a month to remember. I have been really excited for a long time, but I would say I'm bursting at the seams with excitement for the future of testing. And this is, there are so many reasons to do this work. Better science is one of them, ensuring that when people get sick, we have safe and effective medications to care for them, understanding more about human health and disease so we can prevent it, and of course, getting animals out of labs. We've got to get them out of these horrific experiences, and this work is gonna make that happen.
Yeah. Well, excited to hear what's happening around the corner. As we said, some things still are up ahead. What should people be paying attention to before we go?
I think it's really important. So we have the announcements, and now we need to see the agencies put these announcements into practice. And I think because it's come from the top, these are things that are coming at the beginning of the tenure of these leaders of the agencies. I think we can expect good things, but we'll certainly be there working to collaborate and ensure that the agency is indeed carrying out these commitments.
All righty. Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth, and congratulations on the job well done. And more than a decade getting it to the finish line, but we're grateful for the work that you put in. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All righty. If you want more information, visit the website, pcrm.org. Encourage you don't go anywhere. We've got more open coming up right after this.